Welcome back to the Philos Project podcast in partnership with TPS-IL, the press service of Israel, Israel's only news agency. Every other week, the Philos Project and TPS-IL have teamed up to bring you news coming out of Israel and the region. And I, your host, Dominique, get to speak with a TPS-IL reporter. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Sveta Listratov to discuss recent developments, both coming out of Syria and how that will impact Israel's war calculus and security, in addition to Netanyahu's corruption charges and the investigation, which has picked up this week and resumed after the course of this war and how that will affect Israel's domestic politics. In addition to stories on hostage negotiations, how the Trump administration might revive the hope for the return of these hostages who are still held in Gaza, in addition to many other stories. Sveta is a seasoned journalist. She has a decade's worth of journalism under her belt, and she's also served in the IDF as an emergency response instructor and an information officer, and her job is responsible for saving lives in the Galilee region of Israel. She brings a unique perspective, which I thoroughly enjoyed throughout this conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Sveta, welcome to the Philos Project podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Dominique. I'm so excited to be here.
Do you want to give our audience a little bit of background? How long have you been at TPS-IL?
So the Press Service of Israel is Israel's news agency that provides coverage of whatever happens in Israel to international media outlets. And I'm happy to be here for like over a year now. I've actually I've come on board of TPS just like a few weeks before the war started. So it was a very tough beginning. Yes, it was a very tough start to start something new, and then suddenly like the whole reality changes and shifts. So it's been for like a year and a couple of months since I've joined, and I am a reporter here. I'm helping out to make all sorts of coverage and the untold stories from Israel to bring them out to the world. That's more or less it. I've been in journalism for almost a decade now. I used to work for like national outlets, TV channels usually, but so I started something new, and then like the whole life became something absolutely new for us. And so it's been a very busy year. Happy to spend it here with the TPS family.
Amazing. And we're gonna look at one of the articles that you wrote as well for today. So we'll get to see some of your work, which is exciting. So let's start maybe with Syria. I think that's probably the news headline that most people in the United States have been looking to as that has developed. TPS-IL put out this article. I'll put all the articles on the screen just so that everyone can reference what we're talking about. But in this article, it talks about the growing, threat and the strategic difficulty of now Turkey's involvement on the front with Syria. So could you introduce our audience to that, and how does that complicate Israel's war strategy moving forward?
Yeah, so let's just say that this development in Syria for me was not on my bingo list for this year at all. Like we had so much trouble for the last year, like all the fronts, all the conceivable fronts. We didn't, like I myself at least didn't think that we'll be talking about Syria and Turkey coming so close. So that's like one of the craziest stories, and it's very new development. It only happened like a couple of weeks ago, actually. It's amazing how fast everything happens here in the Middle East. Like as soon as something starts, like true reality changes. And the Turkey situation is a tricky one because like on the one hand, Iran, that was like part of the Syrian regime, let's say, is out now. But it doesn't mean that it, like for Israel at least, it doesn't really mean that it's getting any better, because the people who are coming, it seems like people who are coming now to rule in Syria, they're not very nice people. They still don't really like look forward to be peaceful with us or on our border. So, and Turkey is also like, it was very openly well, it wasn't very nice to Israel ever since the war started. Like it was very um, hostile situation, and Turkey has been siding with Hamas for a long, long time. Like we know that it's not something new, but it was like we could really feel it this time. So yeah, so the situation is getting trickier, and what's nice to see is that Israel is like making a very specific stance. We're saying like, no, we are going to like this time we are going to guard our borders. We are going to be here. We are going to make sure that nothing bad happens to our citizens. Like it was enough is enough. So yeah, so on one side we have that. On the other side we have like. The new rulers of Syria, like backed by Turkey, saying you have no business doing here, so like you should go back to to your place. But as I understand it, we are very precise about our well, let's just say our plans to protect ourselves. So hopefully it will be okay. I don't know. It's really new development, but yes. So this article that you showed, I also interviewed the expert on that, and he says that well, it's better to start peacefully talking with Turkey right now, so that we don't have to go to war again, because we're like, you know, it's been a crazy year. We're kind of tired. we just want to we just want to go back to our lives. So he says like we better just start talking and make some kind of peaceful agreement, just like we had like with Russia when Russia was sitting also like in Syria beforehand. I don't know how much realistic that is actually, but it's just because it's so new right now, we have to wait for a second to see like how it develops.
It's so interesting that, you know, Iran was the threat, or has been the threat for since the start of this war specifically. And then in that power vacuum, Turkey really came in and is now trying to kind of creep its territory and also its influence with HTS. And I believe HTS, the new kind of organization that's ruling Syria and took over from the Assad regime, they came out with a video basically supporting Hamas and standing in solidarity with the Palestinians. So while they might not be part of the Iran proxy network, they do sympathize with Hamas and pose a really big threat. And I do believe Israel, as you mentioned, has now this time preemptively created a buffer zone in Syria. I believe Bibi posted a video on X standing in that zone, even though it's been condemned by the UN for violating what they say is international law. And it's been good to see Israel take a very strong stance forward to try and be preemptive about it, because it is a threat to Israel's security, just now on a completely different front. So yeah, it has. What's the conversation in Israel about expanding that buffer zone into Syria? Because I know that the UN has condemned it, even though Turkey has now expanded much of its territory as well, which seems to have gone unnoticed by the UN. What's the overall sentiment in Israel about that?
Well, I have to be very careful saying that,
Okay.
because there's like, you know, it's always
Many
like
different
that.
opinions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like you have, you know, it's Jewish thing. I think you have two Jews, you have like five opinions. So it's like, so we have a lot of opinions.
Okay.
Overall, I think everyone like we've learned our lesson since October 7th. We understand that we need to be strong and protect our borders, but there are still like, you know, people who are saying, because of all sorts of political views or whatever, they're saying that we shouldn't be too greedy. Like it's about greed. It's not about greed, it's about protecting your people. So yeah, so there is an ongoing situation about that. There are also, that's a very interesting situation with the Druze villages the Druze people who live like very close to the border, to the buffer zone, and they're kind of like asking Israel to accept their villages as a part of Israel, something like that. And they have families here in Israel in Golan Heights, and so it's like it's a very also emotional touch to the story, because the families might be reunited now if that happens. But it's like, of course, it's a very sensitive political situation. So again, just like I said, because it's so new yet, we have to like wait and see where exactly it's going.
Well, speaking of tense political situations, maybe now we could talk about Bibi's trial, which I know this has kind of been a long time coming, just the domestic polarization over Netanyahu, and it's kind of now coming to a bit of a head since the war is not over, but it seems that there's now a break in which they can pursue these trials. Could you just give the audience, and even myself, some background? What are the trials about? What is he accused of? And what is it going to look like moving forward?
Yeah, so probably I'm like the worst. It is the hottest like talk of this week, because it's like it's very interesting that the sitting prime minister is being investigated. And now there is a trial, and now he's coming there as a witness to witness for himself. Like it's very juicy. But like I'm probably the worst person to talk about it, because I find it so boring. I've been so I've been looking into this whole story for so long, ever since this trial started, like 2 or 3 years ago. I can't even remember. It's like it's been forever with us. And as soon as the trial started and they started bringing the witnesses, it's like witness after witness. When you follow what's going on at the court, it's like it looks all the same at some point. And right now with Bibi taking the stand, also it's like it looks all the same. um, they're coming to him, they're saying like what is it, like what was it? And they the witnesses answer the questions, and it just doesn't seem like anything of that stands. And everyone is like, what, why are you here then? And like judges are looking at the attorneys and like, why are we here? And it's like over and over and over again for a couple of years now. So it's like I myself like personally getting bored by that. Unfortunately.
And
But it's like that's the situation right now in the politics.
And it's on corruption charges? Is that correct? That he's accused of corruption, and it's been a bit of, like you said, attrition for the Israeli people, because it's been this back and forth. It's been a long, and that's kind of how, not to liken Trump and Bibi, but even Trump in the United States, which I think my views on my podcast are pretty clear. I am a supporter of Trump, but even here in the United States, the whole dialogue about Trump for the last 10 years, it's like, okay, so like obviously this election turned out the way a lot of people hoped. But I feel like with Bibi, it's not the same thing. It's obviously on corruption charges, but it's been this political discourse and this back and forth with the media and the right and the left in Israel. And it just creates this like attrition of like, okay, like when is this going to end? And that's the only thing I can compare it to here in the United States was, that back and forth. And there was legal stuff involved as well. Is there going to be a resolution anytime soon, or you think that this is going to be drawn out for a long time?
I think it's going to be drawn out. Like, like, I mean, it looks so ridiculous. Every legal expert says like we shouldn't be even looking at this by now. It should be like the judges should say that there is nothing to talk about. But it keeps going and keeps going. So I guess we'll have to we'll have to go
Wait
through
and
with it
see.
up until the
Yeah.
end.
And the judicial overhaul reform bill, which he was, supporting, which people claimed he was supporting so that he could then kind of absolve himself from the legal process, that really tore, for people listening, for some context, the summer before October 7th, that really tore Israeli society apart. There's even talks of like, is this going to be a civil war? There's millions of people protesting. So this obviously hits at the heart of the nation. So it'll be interesting to see this kind of happen simultaneously with Israel still fighting its multiple war fronts. So I want to go to this article now about the hostages, which I was thinking about it today with Christmas coming up and Hanukkah coming up, that there's hostages who are now, being held for another round of Christmas celebrations. They haven't been at their holiday tables now for 2 years in a row. So it's just so heartbreaking. Can you give us any developments on what a hostage deal might look like? I know they've talked about a partial hostage deal, which has been controversial for hostage families. Mm-hmm. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you, like, we're talking, you said like the Hanukkah and Christmas and all the holidays are coming, and it's very hard to think about people being held hostage right now. But you have to understand that for us, it's like for me, at least personally, ever since October 7th, like it doesn't leave me. I don't know those people. I never met them. I've interviewed some of the families, so like I know the families kind of, but like I wake up in the morning with them in my thoughts. I go to bed at night with my thoughts about them, and like during the day, sometimes like you just stop and you just think about them. It's like it's become such a big part of our lives in Israel. It's like it does feel like the whole country has been taken hostage, because it's like inevitably, even if you don't know those people, they're kind of part of you. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's very hard, and I like wouldn't believe like ever that even after like 440, I think, days after the war started, we'll still have like 101 hostage still there in Gaza. It's incredible that it's even the situation. So yeah, about the deal, it seems like the talks are that it's going very well right now, like the negotiations. I don't know what to believe, but yeah, they're saying that it is going to be kind of partial. There will be like parts of it, and so they're trying now to get as many people as they can into the humanitarian hostages list, which means like women, first of all, and like all kinds of sick individuals who need medical help. And as far as I know, they're trying to get some of the kidnapped soldiers also into this humanitarian list, because they're some of them probably severely wounded and they do need this medical attention. But it's like I'm not sure how well it's going along. The talks are that it's not going to take forever. But by the end of this week or next week, we'll know something. That's the talks. And of course, so there is one of the forums of the hostage families. It's called the Tikva, Hope. And so they were talking to the press yesterday. So that's in the article. And they are very cautious. Like, of course, they have their loved ones as hostages in Gaza. But they're very cautious, and they're saying, like, well, if you do the deal, do it properly, and like push Hamas as much as you can, because we cannot make the deal and let them get away with something. Like we need to come strong to these negotiations and not make it partial. We need all our hostages back as quickly as possible. Life, those who are alive, those who are dead, everyone. We need all of them, and Hamas just needs to accept it, because very clearly it's been, we kind of winning the war we didn't start and we didn't want. So Hamas has to come to terms with that and give us our hostages back. And so I mean, I understand this their feelings, because they feel like if we don't do this, if we let them keep some of our hostages, they'll still have some kind of leverage on us, which is something we, like Israel, really can't afford. And also, just like I said, it's been for too long that the country has been living, like, half of our hearts here in Israel, half of our hearts there in Gaza. We need to come to some kind of peace with ourselves and to bring everyone home.
And I talked to Rachel about this actually on the last podcast. Strategically, in their interest, it would actually make a lot of sense, because I know Netanyahu promised a reward of a few $1 million. Was it $2 million for every hostage who was returned?
Yeah.
And that still wasn't an incentive enough to yield a favorable outcome, which I think demonstrates that terror and hate is the top priority of those in Hamas, those who sympathize with Hamas, over even their own financial self-interest. So it's been an incredible phenomenon to watch, because even some of the normal rules of war, or what we know of human nature, and we could play a million game tree like outcomes of what Hamas might do, but none of that has seemed to change any outcome. Even with them really losing this war, the tides of the war really have changed significantly. And so I'll be interested to see too, with the new U.S. presidential administration, which has already talked about the hostages and has a special envoy for that. I wonder if that's going to change, or if we're going to leverage more of U.S. power to bring the hostages home, which is my hope moving forward. January can't come soon enough for that. So
that's what we're all praying for,
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we've all that you said is like my sentiment. Like, I feel that we didn't have a strong enough partner who could have, like, helped us in these negotiations. And from what I've heard, the President Trump already talking about on this subject, it seems like he's going to be a more suitable partner, probably, to come up with this with a proper deal. But yeah, let's see. I'm just we only we only have left like prayers to
Yes.
to make it better sooner.
This is Trump's tweet, just for those who are listening. I have it here on my phone. I believe so. This was on the 2nd of this month. He said, "Everybody is talking about the hostages and who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action. Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, the date that I proudly assume office of the President of the United States, there will be an all hell to pay in the Middle East, and for those in charge and who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity." Basically, he goes on to say they'll be held responsible. So it was encouraging to see such a strong statement even before taking office. And my heart does break for Israel in that you didn't have a good partner and ally in this current administration. Not to make it political, I just think it's very I don't even know how someone could argue that Biden's foreign policy was good in any way. There's been blunders across the Middle East and just around the world. And having a weak partner in the U.S. really disadvantaged the negotiations for hostages, and even American hostages. Like the fact that we didn't have like our own, we have a special, I think it's Delta Force operators here in the United States that their mission is to get U.S. hostages abroad. And the fact that they haven't been, I guess, permitted or deployed, maybe they have in some, secret, back room, and maybe they're working on getting the hostages at the moment. But the fact that that wasn't kind of the day one mission of the United States to go get American hostages and then help our ally is just so mind blowing to me. But I want to talk about your article.
So this article is actually one of my favorites because it's deeply personal, actually. So I wouldn't have come up with this story, I think, like I wouldn't know about it, I guess. It wouldn't never catch my eye unless I was myself in reserve duty ever since the war started. And there was a couple of months last year and a couple of months this year, as soon as the escalation in the north with Lebanon has started, I was called up. And so the story that I wrote about is actually the story of the unit that I serve at. It's a home front command, and we are taking care of civilians. So it's actually a very nice story, I think, because it's something that no one, like, whoever comes out of Israel doesn't really even grasp it. I think they don't understand it, that we have municipalities that are totally Arabic and Muslim, and Muslim with Christians who are like all Arabs, and the Druze, which is another ethnicity, like ethnic minority here in Israel. There are lots and lots of those municipalities. They're citizens of Israel, so they are getting our services as a home front command. And these were the people that I have been taking care of during my reserve duty, because they were in my district. We were trying to make sure that as rockets and drones were flying over and blowing up everywhere, as not as many citizens would be hurt by that. So that was like our mission, and that's what we were doing. And what is amazing is that all those municipalities, they are not very well prepared for emergencies usually, because I guess it has something to do with the fact that most Israeli Arabic Muslims, they are not required to serve in the army. So so I think the emergency preparedness is something that comes to when you go to the army and you serve. So they were not very well prepared, and we made it so easy for them. For the last year, we were just being there, leading them, just teaching them everything that they need to. And they came up with these amazing teams, the basic self-help teams, which means that they realized that if like God forbid something bad happens, like there's a rocket that falls exactly in your community, and there is a lot of stuff to take care of, and you have to wait for the police and the ambulances and the home front to come over to help you. It might be like too late, because if there is like some kind of severe attack, so they realized that they need to help themselves. And they made a community of volunteers in every municipality. That was so amazing. They were trained by us how to arrange the basic self-help, actually, every time that something happens, like any kind of scenario. And it was so heartwarming to see that, because I mean, I've been serving in this district ever since like that I was first like enrolled in the army when I was 18. I was always walking around there and going to schools and all kinds of institutes like that in those municipalities, and just telling them what they should do if there is an earthquake, what they should do if there is a rocket attack. And they were very surprised to see a soldier like coming in, because they wouldn't have soldiers in those municipalities. It would be like, oh, there's a soldier. And then suddenly in the last year it was like, hey guys, there are the soldiers, there are the home front command, there are some our pals. And they were just taking pictures, taking selfies with their newfound friends, who are like the soldiers who are coming to train them. And it was just so amazing, so heartwarming. It's like it's such a huge change in like a time span of like 15 years. It's a completely different attitude, completely different connection with people. And it was just amazing, because they kind of realized that, well, they've been taken care of. Like we were coming there, we were there for them. And just as in any other municipality, in any Jewish municipality in the country, they were having the same attention from the army. And it was just amazing that they could succeed in so many things that they did to prepare themselves for their emergencies. So yeah, that was awesome to see. That was great thing that came out of this war.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And those are the stories that I wish trickled down through the news, here in the United States, because there's a huge, I think, perception. Well, first off, that there's no Arabs or minority groups even in Israel. But then when you hear beautiful stories like this, it's really touching. And that's maybe the silver lining of this conflict, is that it's created unity amongst a lot of the different populations within Israel. So let's talk about the media and maybe the bad sides of media, which is this article that TPS posted or published, sorry, which was a study that said 97% of Gaza war reports only cite Hamas sources, which is wild to me, but really prevalent here, even in the United States. I was watching an interview with a prominent, like, former Navy SEAL. He has a podcast. His last name's Ryan, but his first name's escaping me. But regardless, the interviewer was asking him about, is Israel's war justified? And he cited Hamas, like, health ministry statistics, to kind of create the picture that Israel was somehow morally responsible or delegitimate in their war effort. And the interviewer even said something to him like, yeah, but those are self-reported Hamas statistics. And we see that happen in the West all the time, which is wild to me. I know immediately if someone is talking about the war, if they say, Israel's killed 40,000 innocent Palestinian lives, I immediately know what their slant and what their take on the conflict is, just by way of citing Hamas statistics without, accounting for any of the nuances or the incentives of Hamas to self-inflate those numbers or to not distinguish between combatant and civilian. So what is you've been working, the news in Israel since the start of the war. So what's your relationship to these, statistics, and how has that been as a reporter over the course of the war?
Yeah. I only wonder, like, you're saying it's wild. It is wild, but was it surprising for you? this story,
well, maybe at the rate at which people just accepted Hamas statistics. Like, I assumed that there would be, a faction of maybe the political left in the United States and the social justice movement. I assumed that they would, but it's been prevalent even for those on the right. And because I'm a Republican and a Christian, like, I'm in those spaces and I'm in tune of what people are saying. And there's even, people on the conservative side who will cite Hamas statistics. And that's the part that to me is just like wild, that it's just universally kind of cited here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, that's true. All you say is so accurate. I mean, it wasn't surprising. It wasn't even like it was so obvious that Hamas is going to lie, because it's been lying, like, not only in this war, it's been lying about this kind of stuff forever. And yeah, and for the last year, I've done more than one article, I think, talking about it, trying to explain it to the world. Well, I guess it's not about being informed or being uninformed. It's about some outlets' agendas, I guess, because it's like, well, you don't have to be genius to understand that if there is a terrorist organization that actually has, like, it's in its power to manipulate any information inside the health ministry, because they are the health ministry, right? So it's like, you don't have to be a genius to understand that, well, if they can, they probably might, because that's how they will win the informational war. And maybe don't play on that, right? I don't know, maybe be a little bit more critical about it if you're using their numbers. But I guess it's not about being informed or uninformed. It's actually about, like, what those outlets want to like, kind of produce, what kind of information they are willing to produce. So yeah, that's how I saw it. And yeah, also it's like, it's amazing how, I mean, it's only logical. Like, there is some kind of attack, like in Gaza, right? And there is some sort of information that came out that, okay, there are some people killed, but so fast, like in few minutes already, Hamas knows that there has been like 400 people who died in this airstrike. How can you know in a few minutes? Like, I mean, I've seen it like firsthand during my reserve duty, because we did have in my district, we did have unfortunately a lot of rocket strikes, and we had to get also we had to gather the information of how many people are injured, how many people were killed, and all that kind of stuff. I know how much time it takes in smaller strikes, right, to assess this information, and it takes more than a few minutes to be like, sure about what's going on. And here, people are getting in 2 minutes after the airstrike, they're getting like huge numbers, and like, yeah, okay, let's run with it, let's just put it in every article. Okay, like it's not very professional.
Well, I remember too, like in the beginning stages of the war, Al Shifa Hospital was hit, but it was a misfire of Hamas. But before, like you said, within like 3 minutes of it happening, there was a report that 500 people were killed, that a NICU ward was hit, that, Israel targeted the hospital. And in the end, it was a misfire from Hamas. It actually landed in the parking lot, and there were casualties, but the number was significantly less than what was reported. And by the time the story was corrected, it had been published in like every mainstream media outlet around the world. And so I think you mentioned something. It's not about being informed or uninformed. It's about the biases of this war and how you're going to manipulate information to fit a specific narrative. And we've seen that happen over the course of the entire war, which is why I know TPS-IL's mission is to give, unbiased, real hard news from the ground. So there are news outlets such as yours that do that kind of work. But unfortunately, as you said, many people take advantage of the Hamas numbers to paint a narrative. And it's been wild to see. It's like a lie that the whole world knows about, but everyone's just continually buying into to fit their own worldview and narrative. So, yeah, it's been wild. And I'm sure being on the ground in Israel, being a reporter, I would be so frustrated. I don't know how you do your job, because it's just like seeing truth and seeing what's actually happening, and then seeing what's reported, and seeing the hypocrisy or just the blatant lies can be extremely frustrating. But we can end on a happier note because it's the holiday season.
So yeah, so today in Jerusalem, if you are coming to Jerusalem sometime around this year, you can get yourself the Christmas tree in in the old city. There's a very nice Santa going around and distributing those trees. It's really amazing. It does feel kind of festive right now, because also Hanukkah is coming up, of course, and everyone is getting like this hopeful feeling of, oh, maybe our prayers are going to be answered now, and we are going to get some peace of mind, and we are going to get our people back and our soldiers safe. And so it's been a lot of stuff going on, and hopefully we are going to have our Christmas and our Hanukkah this year, like in a more optimistic state than it was last year. Last year it was very harsh. And by the way, it's like, it's amazing. I mean, I used to have Christian Arabic friends here in Israel, but in the last year, it's like the number of my Christian Arabic friends just have grown because of the reserve service, because I've met so many people who were serving with me, and they're Christian Arabs and they're Muslim Arabs who are volunteering. And it's so amazing. I feel so grateful that every time there is a holiday coming up, I have like a huge list of people to to congratulate, to let them know that I'm thinking about them, and they invite me over to have the holidays with them. And so it's like, it's so amazing. You have to, like, you have to say that there are some bright sides to any like critical situation, even if it was a year of like almost hell for us. Still, like I feel like I'm so grateful that I can pick those small moments and be grateful for them. So yeah, that's what I wish you and your listeners, by the way, on this Christmas.
Thank you, and happy Hanukkah. And I've been in Israel for Christmas. I've been there during Ramadan. Really, like, Jerusalem is just this beautiful city in which there's always, it feels like, between the three Abrahamic faiths, some sort of religious or like holiday being celebrated, a religious high holiday. And so it's really such a beautiful city, which also does not get reported on here in the United States. There's also factions that believe Christians are persecuted in Israel, that you can't wear a cross, but it's really quite the opposite. And I think one thing I've learned about my Jewish friends is that they're so gracious in celebrating our holidays too and giving us well wishes. So I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for coming on. Do you have an X or anywhere that you want our audience to follow your work?
If you got some kind of idea of what TPS is all about after we've talked for a while now, and if anyone is interested in supporting or getting involved in our work to ensure that Israel's voice continues to be heard also on media, in international media, then check out our website. I think you might have the links, and we're happy for anyone to contribute.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So similar to the Philos Project, TPS-IL is a nonprofit. So we'll put the giving link for TPS-IL also in the description box below to contribute to y'all's amazing work. So thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Oh yeah, I'll be happy to. It was so nice, so nice meeting you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Philos Project podcast in partnership with TPS-IL. If you feel so led to give to this partnership and the initiative to bring you news from the region every week, I will leave a giving link in the description box below to both the Philos Project and TPS-IL. If you'd like to learn more about the region and go in depth, I would encourage you to check out our Pathfinder courses, which are fully subsidized. And for those who are seeking to earn a degree in higher education in the space, then I encourage you to check out our Hebraic Studies program in partnership with YU. Our applications will be opening for the 2025-2026 cohort. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode, and I will see you in the next one.